Hey y'all, welcome to the Clock Tower. I'm Colton, here with Brandon. Got a couple of big things to talk about. Obviously, our first Springfest tournaments have taken place over the last couple of weeks. But before we get into that, we wanted to talk about Bushiroad's Spring Conference stream where they talk about English releases. They announced this as our last Clock Talk was being finalized, so we didn't really get a chance to talk about it beforehand, but now that it's happened, we can talk about the announcements. Obviously, there are a couple of big headlines. Two of those unknown slots at the end of 2022 have been filled. One of them is going to be set to for Bunny Girl Senpai, and the other is going to be set to for Seven Deadly Sins. The first time that they've done a sequel to an English original, it will also be an English original. Neither of those were on our shortlist, but neither of them are particularly surprising, I don't think.
Yeah, I think that the Bunny Girl reprint plus Bunny Girl 2 was something that had been asked for a long time coming. Seven Deadly Sins 2, I think, is the biggest surprise for us, especially since it's the first real sequel to an English original. We saw a sequel set come out with English originals for Attack on Titan Final Season, but to see a sequel set of an already English original, I think is a little bit surprising that Seven Deadly Sins did it as well as it did to merit a second set.
Yeah, they've never done a sequel to something that they released as an English original. They have done English originals as sequels with Attack on Titan, or at least they've done it once. But they've never done a sequel to something that was originally dropped for English alone, or English first. So SDS, that announcement demonstrates their willingness to move into that space. So all of a sudden with, Ruby getting a new show, I think we could see that potentially as a future sequel set, right? It opens up the design space for things like Adventure Time 2, if that is a thing. So now when we talk about EN originals, we have to talk about the possibility that we might be getting sequels in that slot. As you mentioned, Bunny Girl Senpai getting a reprint for that grievously underprinted first set. Good on Bushiroad. Honestly, set 2 was going to do a lot worse if they didn't do a set 1 reprint, just because those cards are prohibitively difficult to get a hold of. So good on them for announcing that reprint.
There is an unannounced announcement yet to come that was posted to their website, but was not included in the stream itself.
Yeah, they've been dropping Twitter hints and stuff, and they seem to indicate that there was a third thing that they were planning on talking about, but they did not talk about it on stream. That being said, we now know 2 of kind of the 4 months post AOT3. Still, obviously, a lot of possibilities for what could come out later on this year. You have speculated yourself that you think a third English original might be in the cards for the year?
Yeah, I think it's very possible. SDS 2 kind of got announced a little earlier than maybe we expected it to, right? Because these 2 announcements we expect to be kind of that September-October range of when they're going to come out. So that still leaves that November-December time slots of potential releases. Typically, we see that being more that December slot. So unless they announced SDS 2 significantly earlier, and they're going to try to fit more sets in between, there could be that English original spot right there at the end. Because SDS 2 kind of breaks the mold a little bit, right? The idea that potentially that English originals are trying to get newer audiences into the game of Weiss, SDS 2 probably doesn't have a trial deck. And since trial decks are kind of like the main focus of what they try to sell to newer players, saying, hey, this is how you're going to get into the game and how to learn how to play, it doesn't quite line up with some of those things that we would expect from an English original. So my guess is, this is very much a guess, is there might be an additional English original in December.
I agree that that's technically on the table. I don't think we'll get one. I don't think there will be a third. But Bushiroad has also, in this last stream, shown a willingness to break with precedent. So I don't think there's anything that's really off the table when we talk about what might be coming next. But with the announcements of Bunny Girl 2 and SDS 2, Bushiroad has expanded the pool of what is available and what is within reach, potentially for English release, so we'll see what happens. Obviously, highly speculative. We've done a lot of speculating on what those slots might be before. We're not going to retread that ground here. But in any case, still going to be very interesting to see what Bushiroad decides to do. We probably will not know until end of June into July is probably when we will get the next product stream. We will probably get that other announcement, though, that they referenced on their website probably in the next few weeks, I would imagine. Probably before the end of May, at least, would be my guess. So at least know what that one is.
We did get a couple of delays in products being released. The booster pack for Hololive is going to be delayed from April 29th to May 13th. The trial decks will still come out on the 29th, but the booster pack is going to be delayed until the 13th. Because of the changes with that, you're pushing back the Title Cup a month as well, so stores can start holding those in June.
So that's kind of the 30,000-foot view at the release schedule. They announced a couple other things that are worth noting during the stream. They almost offhandedly referenced that they want to keep doing online tournaments and that they're going to do another big online tournament this year. Great news. That is excellent, excellent news. And they cited the reasons that we've talked about, kind of ad nauseum, right? That, it gives people more access to play, gives people more opportunities to play. So there will be more online play, sanctioned by Bushiroad, even in a world where we're able to gather and play in person. So, good move on Bushiroad's part. That is probably the biggest dub that we took, I think, from the stream, as much as it was kind of like a small thing that they basically mentioned once at the top and didn't really go into. The fact that they've basically confirmed that there will be more online play sanctioned by Bushiroad, that is excellent news. The other thing that's kind of cool is they're doing PR packs for every set that has a release date. So we're going to see them for Camelot, we're going to see them for Tokyo Revengers, we're going to see them for Danmachi. All these sets that have release dates currently on the calendar have a PR pack that will be distributed to stores. They'll have the randomness element, right? But more promos. I think that's designed to try to get more people into stores to play physical cards in person. So those are neat. That will be happening as well as we go through the summer. No word on any further locals level formats or anything like that. So don't know when that starts or if they're planning on doing anything before summer, but they didn't announce anything during the stream, so I think it's pretty safe to assume we will not have a locals tournament format. Nothing formal or official anyway, until at least the summer. Moving on from the stream and on to the tournaments that we had this last weekend and the weekend before. First Springfest events. One happened in California and the other in Belgium. There is a temptation to look at these results and try to discern the meta, right? Especially given, that's what we've done so fastidiously with Rumble and last year's Springfest, and, especially since, we had so few tournaments to analyze because of COVID. But of course, there are some inherent challenges with doing that with a trios format. These are smaller tournaments, fewer teams are playing, you're far more likely to get outliers, and it's a team event, right? So, a deck that isn't performing well can be carried by the teammates that are, right? So, everything that you take away from trios tournament analysis in terms of trying to decipher what the meta looks like has to be taken with a grain of salt. That being said, these are the results that we have so far from the two tournaments. Thank you so much to Taya for collecting this data. We will link to her page where she has links to deck lists and all that stuff in the description. Overarching things we see here, I think number one is the presence of Mushoku Tensei. It's in 9 of the 13 teams that we've seen so far in top 8 in these two tournaments. I think just the presence of standby in general, almost every team has some kind of standby in it, and or it's running some kind of anti-standby tech. We see a couple of the Beaufry anti-standby lists in particular. And the stuff that got hit by the ban list, whether by it just not performing as well because it got hit by the ban list, or people not wanting to play it as much because we don't have representation numbers because of how badly they got hit, those two sets don't show up as much as we would have expected pre-restriction list. Those are like the three main takeaways that I'm seeing looking at these results.
Yeah, no, I think seeing some of the different, especially since this is really early, right? We have quite a few Springfests yet to go. With that in mind, we still have the opportunity to see some different groups' interpretations of what to bring and what deck lists made it in. And I think seeing a lot of variety, especially early on, I think is really interesting regarding like the number of one-ofs that we have, right?
Yeah, like we see Fujimi Bunko, we see quintuplets, we see Madoka, we see an AOT, like there's stuff from all over, and that's, I think, one of the things that makes Springfest and Trios in particular an interesting format is it kind of gives those decks more of an opportunity because you're not necessarily just trying to play the one best deck, right? And kind of shrinking down the pool of playable decks. Now it's, because your team has to bring 3, okay, that kind of broadens the pool a little bit.
I do also think seeing some of these decks with significant counts of representation is also important because I think that also establishes how the community values some of those decks and where they would rate some of the decks.
To a certain extent, yeah. I also think that, trios are inherently a more casual format than singles. You're far more likely to see people bring something more resembling a waifu deck or a casual level deck to an event like this. So, again, grain of salt, right? There were only, 14 teams that played at Antwerp? And in a small format like that, if, your teammates are playing well or you're getting into good matchups or, you get a couple of, lucky games, because that happens, results skew a lot more wildly. Like the standard deviation isn't as useful because it's much broader in a trios format. You're going to see stuff do well that will not do well in a singles format because it has the chance to lean on teammates that are performing well or potentially draw into better matchups because the pool of decks is broader. It's super tempting. I want to just dive into this data and pick it apart bit by bit, but it's ultimately not as useful for discerning what's going to be really good in a singles meta, just because the meta itself is different. However, broad sweeping strokes, there are clearly some trends that are observable, and I think those are the things that are more important for us to note when we look at this data. And over the course of the spring and summer, as we get more of these results in, maybe we'll be able to get a broader picture just because we'll have a bigger sample size. But as of right now, really early, maybe at the end of the summer, we'll have a bigger, better picture of what we can expect because there's enough data there, but we'll see. Still, a lot of things are up in the air with that, but these are the results that we have. And obviously, congratulations to the players who participated and won and topped.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially as we look forward to more Springfest coming out. Some news that we did get about Springfest in general. Just make sure that you do have your vaccine cards submitted. There have been people that have been turned away from not having those on file or on hand or not having them up to date. So making sure that yours is ready to go is really important.
Yeah.
As well as everybody submitting information. Making sure that when you're registering that every person is registering, not just one person for the whole team, because that can cause problems as you get involved with that as well.
When in doubt, over-register. That seems to be the takeaway. Bushiroad, for whatever reason, with these events, they've been sticklers for details and things before. They seem to be being sticklers for details and things again. So make sure that you dot all of your I's and cross all of your T's. Make sure your vaccine card is up to date, that you submit it when you register, that you bring it with you to the tournament. Make sure you have your ID on you. Make sure you have your mask on you. Make sure that you have a playmat that isn't a custom mat on you. Like, make sure that you have sleeves. Make sure that you sleeve your oversleeves backwards, because that's a thing as well. Make sure you bring your birth certificate and your social security card and a sample of your blood. Is there anything else I'm missing? Like, I think, do they need fingerprints as well?
Deck lists?
They do need the deck list. They need the deck list. You also need your deck list. And honestly, I will be printing a physical copy of my deck list because I'm not messing with this. Like, it feels like there are a lot of ways that something could go wrong. So make sure that you lean into whatever part of your brain is obsessed with details. And if you're not obsessed with details, find someone who is, and make sure that you have every possible base covered, because they're clearly being sticklers about this stuff. So do as much prep work as you possibly can in advance to make sure that you are able to get in with as few issues as possible. So that's it for us. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll be back on Thursday with 5 Cards, 5 Minutes, talking about uncommons and commons from Mushoku Tensei. Next week, Brandon will have Weiss 101 on Tuesday, and we will have gameplay a week from Thursday. Until next time, thank you so much for joining us. Please like, share, comment, and subscribe, and have a good one.
We'll see you then.